Have you ever felt like you're being pulled in two different directions when making a decision? On one side is your heart, urging you to follow what you want. On the other side is your mind, reminding you of the potential consequences. This is the battle between the two thinking systems within each of us. Hi, I'm Sophia. Don't forget to follow the great books in the description. I end today's video. We will delve deeper into this phenomenon and explore how to make better decisions. In the book Thinking, Fast and Slow, the author explores the two main thinking systems of humans, one that is instinctive and one that is deliberate. These two systems constantly interact, shaping our decisions and behaviors in everyday life. System 1, also known as the intuitive system, operates automatically and quickly. It is the part of the mind that we use to respond immediately to sudden stimuli. For example, when you hear a loud and sudden noise, you will instinctively direct your attention towards the sound without much thought. This is the function of System 1, an evolutionary legacy that helps us make quick decisions in urgent situations. In contrast, System 2 is the part of the mind responsible for deliberation, analysis, and reasoning. It operates more slowly, requiring focus and conscious control. For example, when you try to find someone in a crowd, System 2 helps you focus on the person's characteristics, filtering out distractions to find them. This focus helps minimize distraction and improves detection ability. The relationship between these two systems not only shapes how we behave, but also significantly influences our decision-making. To understand better, let's try solving a famous problem. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Many people will immediately think the ball costs 10 cents, a result from System 1 with its quick and intuitive responses. However, upon recalculating, the correct answer is that the ball costs 50 cents. This demonstrates that System 1 can lead to incorrect conclusions without the intervention of System 2. In this problem, System 1 provided an answer too quickly and inaccurately due to oversimplification. The interaction between System 1 and System 2 is key to understanding how we make decisions and behave. While System 1 allows us to react quickly, System 2 provides deeper analysis and helps avoid errors that can occur when relying solely on intuition. Problems like the bat and ball not only challenge our intellect, but also illustrate the laziness of our instinctive thinking. According to the principle of least effort, we often use minimal energy needed for tasks to conserve effort. System 1, with its quick and intuitive responses, often accepts temporary answers without thorough checking through System 2, which requires deeper deliberation and analysis. As a result, the lack of application of System 2 can lead to avoidable mistakes. However, System 2 plays a crucial role in human intelligence. Research shows that practicing skills related to System 2, such as concentration and self-control, can enhance our intelligence. For example, the bat and ball problem shows that if we take the time to think carefully and verify answers using System 2, we can avoid mistakes caused by mental laziness. But why don't we always consciously control our thoughts and actions? Consider the letters EXO. If you have previously seen the letters INT, you might associate the letter E with all when looking back. This is an example of priming, a psychological phenomenon where prior information influences how we react to subsequent information. We are often unaware that our thoughts and actions are influenced by the priming process. It is surprising that we are entirely unaware of the extent to which our thoughts and actions are influenced by priming. Contrary to popular belief, we are not always consciously in control of our actions, judgments, and choices. Instead, social and cultural conditions around us often shape how we behave. For instance, research has shown that merely thinking about money can make us more self-centered. People exposed to the concept of money, such as by seeing images of bills, tend to act more independently and are less willing to engage with or accept requests from others. Voce's research indicates that the presence of material and financial factors in society can make us more selfish. Priming, along with other social factors, can have a profound impact on how we think, choose, judge, and act. These influences not only reflect the individual, but also contribute to shaping the culture and society we live in. When we have to make quick decisions, especially when lacking full information, we are easily influenced by initial impressions. For example, if you meet someone at a party and find him very approachable, you might quickly think he is someone who supports charitable activities just because of that initial impression. Even though you only know him as a friendly person, you might start to like everything about him. In reality, we often tend to like or dislike someone based on very little information about them. When our minds simplify incomplete information to make judgments, we often fall into errors due to phenomena like the halo effect. For instance, the pleasant feeling when talking to someone might create a positive halo around them. Even though we don't know much about them, we tend to perceive them more positively due to the initial emotional impact. This is not the only way our minds shortcut judgments about others. Another common tendency is confirmation bias. This happens when we agree with information that supports our current beliefs and accept any information that aligns with those beliefs. When asked about the friendliness of a person we don't know much about, the mind tends to quickly agree with positive suggestions, as we find it easier to accept suggested information than to analyze objectively. The halo effects and confirmation biases often occur simultaneously because our minds tend to make hasty judgments, especially when lacking information. We rely on erroneous cues and simplified information to fill in gaps, leading to cognitive biases. Our minds use quick strategies to make decisions in urgent situations, known as heuristics. While these strategies are often useful, they can lead to errors when overused or misapplied. Although heuristics are necessary for quickly grasping our surroundings, they can sometimes cause significant errors due to lack of information or inaccurate judgment. To understand how we think, two important concepts are substitution heuristic. When faced with a difficult question, we often substitute it with an easier one. For example, when evaluating a candidate's suitability for a police chief position, we might compare her to an ideal police chief rather than directly assessing her abilities. Availability heuristic. We assess the likelihood of an event based on how familiar we are with it. For instance, we might assume traffic accidents cause more deaths than strokes just because we hear about traffic accidents more frequently in the media. Both phenomena show how our minds often rely on ease and familiarity to make decisions rather than thorough and accurate analysis. For example, even though statistics show that strokes cause more deaths than traffic accidents, many people think traffic accidents are more dangerous. This happens because we hear more about traffic accidents, creating a stronger impression in our minds. We tend to remember more shocking information and thus make incorrect assessments. To predict more accurately, pay attention to base rates. For instance, if a taxi company has 20% yellow taxis and 80% red taxis, remember this ratio when guessing a taxi's color. However, we often forget the base rate because we focus too much on what we expect. Imagine you're standing by the road waiting for a taxi. You've just seen 5 consecutive red taxis. At this point, you might think, the next taxi should be yellow. But is your intuition correct? In reality, if you know that 80% of the taxis in the city are red, the probability that the next taxi is red remains 80% regardless of what you have observed before. This is a classic example of how human psychology is influenced by recent events, causing us to overlook objective statistical data. When discussing an athlete's performance, we often observe fluctuations. A football player might score many goals in one season, but score fewer in the next. This phenomenon is called regression to the mean. It means that after a series of unusual results, whether good or bad, the next results often tend to return to average levels. For example, if a player scores many goals in a match, he is likely to score fewer goals in subsequent matches. This does not mean the player has become worse, but simply that the results are returning to his average. We often recall the past not as it actually happened, but through the lens of delayed emotions. In fact, there are 2 different mechanisms in our minds: the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self records our feelings in the present moment, accurately reflecting our satisfaction or discomfort at that time. like when you're enjoying a delicious meal. In contrast, the remembering self records the overall feeling of an event after it has ended. For example, you might remember that meal as a wonderful experience, even though your actual feelings at the time might not have been perfect. Although the experiencing self provides a more accurate view of what actually happened, the remembering self dominates our memory because it only records prominent memories and blurs the actual feelings at the time. Therefore, the way we remember the past is often influenced by delayed emotions rather than reality. There are two main reasons explaining why our memories of an event are often inaccurate. The first reason is the ignoring time factor phenomenon, where we forget the entire process and only remember a small part. The second reason is the peak end rule, where we often emphasize the emotions at the end of the event. An experiment illustrates this with the memory of two groups of people undergoing colonoscopy. The first group had a longer colonoscopy, while the second group had a shorter colonoscopy but experienced increasing pain. The results showed that those in the first group, despite enduring pain for a longer period, did not remember the procedure as painfully as those in the second group when recalling the event. This shows that the experiencing self feels pain more intensely, while the remembering self might recall a less unpleasant experience if the procedure ends less painfully. Thus, the peak end rule demonstrates how our memories can be significantly distorted by the ending part of an experience. There are two main reasons why our memories of an event are often inaccurate. The first reason is the phenomenon of ignoring the element of time, where we forget the entire process and only remember a small part. The second reason is the peak end rule, where we tend to emphasize the emotions experienced at the end of the event. An experiment illustrating this involved the memory of two groups of people undergoing a colonoscopy. The first group underwent a longer colonoscopy, while the second group had a shorter procedure but with progressively increasing pain. The results showed that those in the first group, despite enduring pain for a longer time, did not recall the experience as more painful than those in the second group when reflecting on it. This indicates that the experiencing self records sensations accurately at the time, but the remembering self is significantly influenced by the emotions at the end of the event, leading to inaccuracies in our memories. We have the ability to adjust the level of energy our mind uses and select the thinking system appropriate for each task. For example, if you want to convey a message more persuasively, shift to a comfortable cognitive state where the System 1 takes over. One way to achieve this is by frequently exposing yourself to the same information. When information is repeated or easier to remember, it becomes more persuasive because the mind responds more positively to what is familiar. When we encounter something familiar, we are more easily persuaded. Another method to adjust the level of energy in the mind is through quiet reflection, where you need to regulate your emotions to create a more focused state. To achieve a comfortable mental state, you can practice methods such as meditation or spend time in a quiet space to focus on yourself. When emotions are stabilized, energy levels are adjusted and mental focus becomes stronger. Always remember that balancing System 1 and System 2 in the mind can help you make better decisions. In many situations, adjusting mental energy and focus is crucial to achieving the best outcomes. However, when attention and concentration are required, we use more energy and enter a state of mental stress. These changes have a significant impact on our behavior. In a relaxed state, System 1, intuition, dominates the mind, while System 2, rationality, becomes weaker, making us more intuitive, creative, and happier, but also more prone to mistakes. Conversely, in a state of stress, our awareness is heightened, and System 2 takes over, re-evaluating our observations more, which makes us less creative but also less likely to make mistakes. You can adjust your mental energy by choosing which system to dominate depending on the task at hand. For example, to deliver more persuasive messages, you might try shifting to a relaxed cognitive state. One way to achieve this is by repeatedly exposing yourself to the same information. When information is repeated or easier to remember, it becomes more persuasive because the mind responds more positively to familiar information. When we encounter something familiar, we more easily enter a relaxed mental state. However, a stressed state can help us achieve better results in tasks involving numbers. When we shift to this state by engaging with more complexly presented information, such as information that is not easily understood, our minds need to pay more attention and increase energy to grasp the issue. As a result, we are less likely to give up and will be more persistent in solving problems. The way probabilities are presented can significantly impact how we assess risk. We are often influenced by how ideas and issues are presented to us. Small changes in details, the emphasis on certain statements, or the way questions are framed can completely alter our responses. For example, in risk assessment studies, even though the probability of an event can be calculated accurately, how these numbers are presented can change how we approach and react to them. Even with careful probability calculations, changes in phrasing can lead to changes in how we perceive and process the information. For instance, people might perceive a rare event as having a higher likelihood if it is presented in a way that emphasizes its frequency, rather than providing statistical figures. In one study, 2 groups of psychologists were asked about the safety of releasing patients from a psychiatric hospital. One group was informed that a patient, Mr. John, had a 10% chance of violent behavior, while the second group was told that out of 100 patients, only 10 were likely to be violent. The results showed that the second group was twice as likely to refuse Mr. John's release compared to the first group. Our decision-making focus is often influenced by related statistical information. This is known as ignoring the base rate, which occurs when we overlook clear statistics in favor of vivid mental images that may affect our decisions. For example, 2 figures might indicate that a drug can protect children from disease X, but has a 0.1% chance of causing permanent deformities. 1 in 100,000 children who take this drug will suffer permanent deformities. Although both statements convey the same meaning, the second one evokes a more vivid image of a deformed child, creating a stronger emotional impact and increasing skepticism about using the drug. Humans often make decisions not only based on logic, but are also strongly influenced by emotions and intuition. While economic theory suggests that decisions should be based on overall benefits, meaning choosing the option that provides the greatest benefit, reality often shows the opposite. For example, according to the theory of utility, if you prefer oranges over kiwis, you would choose a 10% chance of getting an orange peel, rather than a 10% chance of getting a kiwi. However, this does not always reflect how we actually make decisions. The theory also suggests that if 2 people, John and Jenny, both have a net worth of $5 million, they would be equally happy. But in reality, their emotional responses will differ based on how they achieved that amount. John started with $1 million and earned $5 million, while Jenny had $9 million and then lost $4 million to end up with $5 million. Although their final wealth is the same, their feelings of success or failure will be distinctly different, showing that emotions and intuition significantly impact how we evaluate and make decisions, not just based on pure utility theory. The theory of prospect helps explain why we don't always make decisions based purely on logic. For instance, in the first scenario, if you receive $1,000 and have to choose between receiving an additional $500 with certainty or betting with a 50/50 chance to receive an additional $1,000, you would likely choose the guaranteed $500. In the second scenario, if you already have $2,000 and must choose between definitely losing $500 or betting with a 50/50 chance of losing $1,000, most people would choose to take the gamble to avoid losing $1,000. The theory of prospect explains this difference in our decisions. The first reason is that we feel more concern about losses than about gains. The second reason is that we often evaluate value based on an initial reference point. In the 2 scenarios, the reference point changes how we assess our willingness to take risks. For instance, the reference point in the first scenario is $1,000, whereas in the second scenario, it is $2,000. Losing $500 from $15 feels worse than losing $500 from $2,000. People often place too much trust in mental images, which can sometimes lead to mistake. However, there are methods to improve accuracy in predictions. One approach is to use historical data for predictions rather than relying on vague mental images. For instance, recall how you handled cold weather in the summer and what you chose to wear. You can also develop a long-term strategy to prepare for various scenarios based on past accurate and inaccurate predictions. By thoroughly preparing, you can rely on more objective data rather than mental images, leading to more accurate predictions. The book Thinking, Fast and Slow points out that our minds operate through two main systems. System 1, which is intuitive and effortless, and System 2, which is more deliberate, requiring effort and concentration. The shift in our thinking and behavior depends on which system is dominating the brain at any given time. To make messages more persuasive, repeat them frequently, and don't let rare events overly influence you just because they are repeated in the media. You will be more creative and intuitive when you're in a good mood, as the brain's alert and analytical parts are less active, allowing the intuitive and fast-thinking systems to work more effectively. Hope you find this video useful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support us.